Today in pre-cal we're doing a review of linear equations. So things like slope, how to write equations, parallel lines, and perpendicular lines. The first thing we did in our notes was to define slope, which is between 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, using the slope formula. Hopefully you still remember that from Algebra 1. If not, here it is. You will need to know this for your exam. And that's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's the slope formula. You take the values from your x2, y2, and your x1, y1, and you plug them in here and solve for your slope. To find the slope, when you have 2 points, you're just going to label. And hopefully you've done enough practice with this in the past to maybe not have to label and just kind of mentally look, but if you need to, that's fine. So for slope, I'm going to do negative 1 minus 6 over 2 minus negative 4. Negative 1 minus 6, 2 minus negative 4. A negative negative becomes a positive, and on the top I've got negative 7, on the bottom I've got 6. So the slope of the line containing the point, negative 4, 6, and 2, negative 1, is negative 7 over 6. Let's try one more. Find the slope of the line containing negative 2, 6, and negative 2, 4. So I'm going to do 4 minus 6 over negative 2 minus negative 2. Again, this becomes a plus. I've got negative 2 over negative 2 plus 2, which is 0. Remember, anytime 0 is on the bottom, a function is said to be, or slope is undefined. So 0 on the bottom. I'm going to put a star there. 0 on the bottom means undefined. If you were to have 0 on top, such as 0 over 2, then that is just equal to 0. Which brings us to this next little box of things that hopefully you remember, and that is that the slope of a vertical line is undefined. The slope of a horizontal line is 0. So this would look straight up and down like this. This would be similar to the y-axis, or the x-axis, excuse me. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is writing equations of linear functions. So we had two major forms that we used. The first is slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Remember that m stands for your slope and b stands for your y-intercept. For point-slope form, we have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We're going to replace x1, y1 with a point and m with our slope. Let's look at some examples. If I'm given this equation, rewrite the equation y minus 3 equals negative 2/5 times x minus 4 in slope-intercept form. It's already in point-slope form. See, here's your slope and here's your point. To get it into slope-intercept form, we're going to rework the equation or distribute it and get y by itself. So I'm going to distribute negative 2/5. So I have negative 2/5 x minus, and then I've got negative 2/5 times negative 4. A negative times a negative is a positive. If I multiply 2 times 4, that gives me 8 over 5. Remember that that 4 is really just 4 over 1. I multiply across the top and across the bottom. I can recopy down the y minus 3. And now the final step to get y by itself is to add 3 to both sides. On this side it'll cancel. Over here I'm going to have y equals negative 2/5 x plus, and then I want to add 3 plus 8/5. I could just write that as 3 and 8/5, and that would be fine. Or I can write it as a mixed fraction with a common denominator, which is really the preference in this class. The common denominator, of course, would be 5. 3 times 5 is 15. So 15 over 5 is equivalent to 3. And 15 plus 8 is 23/5. We've written that one in slope-intercept form. There's our slope. There's our intercept, our y-intercept. Okay, on the back side of your notes, we did a couple of more examples of this kind of stuff. In particular, if we're given 2 points, can we write the equation in point-slope form and in slope-intercept form? Now, both of these, there's a key word here, and that is that you need the slope. You don't have the slope, you have 2 points. But from there, you can find your slope. So that's the first step, find your slope. 7 minus 5 over negative 2 minus 3. 7 minus 5 is 2. Negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. So our slope is negative 2/5. To put it in point-slope form, I'm going to choose one coordinate or the other. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to choose the first one since they're both positive. In general, the less negatives we have to mess with, the more likely we are to make, less likely we are to make a mistake. Excuse me. So I'm going to do y minus 5, that's coming from here, y1, equals negative 2/5, that's our m from right here, times x minus 3. That's our x1 from here. Now that's it for point-slope form. We're done. Again, to get it into slope-intercept form, we're going to work out that equation or distribute and move things to get y by itself. So I'm going to say y minus 5 equals negative 2/5 x plus 2 times 3 is 6 over 5, 6/5. Again, a negative times a negative is positive. And then I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And in slope-intercept form, I have y equals negative 2/5 x plus 5 times 5 is 25. 25 plus 6 is 31/5. Okay, the last thing we want to do in this section is to write the equation of a line that has an x-intercept of negative 3 and a y-intercept of 8. Write your final answer in slope-intercept form. So on this one, they give us some information about intercepts. Now, for an x-intercept, we know that that means if it's negative 3, there's negative 3 here and 0 in the y place. For a y-intercept, that means it's 0, 8. For slope-intercept form, we need m and b. I'm going to start this way with just giving you b as 8, because that's the y-intercept that was given right here. And we could use these 2 points and calculate slope, just like we did in this problem. There's several ways we could do this. I'm going to go from there and use slope-intercept form and say y equals mx plus b, but b is 8, right? We just talked about that. And then I'm going to choose my x-intercept, and I'm going to plug that into my x and my y and solve for my m. So I'm going to say 0 equals m times negative 3 plus 8. And then I'm going to solve for m. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And I have negative 8 equals negative 3m. Just multiplying here, so I just put the number out front to make that a little easier. Divide both sides by negative 3 to get the m by itself. And the slope of this line is 8/3. My equation then is y equals 8/3 x plus 8. That was kind of a quick way to get us to slope-intercept form. The last thing we needed to talk about today was parallel and perpendicular lines. Parallel lines have slopes that are the same. So the same exact value will give me parallel lines. That should make sense. If they have the same steepness, they're never going to touch or cross. On the contrary, perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocal. Opposite reciprocal. And when I teach this to my algebra students, I tell them that means flip the sign, flip the fraction. So if those words opposite, reciprocal don't mean anything to you, opposite, flip the sign, reciprocal, flip the fraction. Find the equation of the line through negative 2, 5 that is parallel to the x-axis. Okay, well, let's think about the x-axis. Straight across. Its slope is 0, and if we describe that line, it's y equals 0. Again, the slope is 0. So if I take this point and use my point-slope form, I could do y minus 5 equals 0 times x minus negative 2. On this side, I've got y minus 5 equals 0 times anything is 0. Add 5 to both sides, and y equals 5. Basically, you should be able to see that what ended up happening is I took the y-coordinate of my point, and there is no slope, so it's just another y equals line. Instead of showing you how to do the full-out perpendicular, let's just use our reasoning skills. If it's perpendicular to the x-axis, it's going to be an x equals line. And in particular, it's just this one, this negative 2. When I want something parallel or perpendicular to the x or the y-axis, it's always going to be a line that's either x equals or y equals. And then you may just need to make a little drawing from there to understand how that works. Let's look at a few more problems that don't involve slope of 0 undefined. If I want to write the equation of the line through negative 3, 4 that is parallel to 2x minus 5y equals 8, and I want you to write that in slope-intercept form. I'm going to start with this equation right here so that I can find my slope. By getting y by itself or getting the equation into slope-intercept form, I can find my slope. So I'm going to start with 2x minus 5y equals 8. I'm going to get y by itself by subtracting 2x from both sides. Negative 5y equals negative 2x plus 8. Divide both sides by negative 5. And y equals 2/5 x minus 8/5. The only important thing here for our purposes is the slope of 2/5. That's what we needed. Because we're looking for a parallel line, and we just said that parallel lines have the same slope. Now you have a point and a slope with which to make an equation. So we're going to do y minus y1, which is 4, equals m, 2/5, x minus x1, which becomes plus because it was a negative 3. I'm going to distribute my 2/5 so that I have 2/5 x plus 6/5. I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and y equals 2/5 x plus 4 times 5 is 20, 20 plus 6 is 26/5. There's my final answer. The last thing we need to practice is a line perpendicular to something, so we want the equation of the line through 4, negative 1, and perpendicular to the line containing negative 3, 6, and 2, 7. Answer in slope-intercept form. I have 2 points. I want a line perpendicular to that, so I need to get an opposite reciprocal slope. Before I can get an opposite reciprocal slope, I need to get the original slope. So m equals 7 minus 6 over 2 minus negative 3, which is 1 over 5. Now, to get opposite reciprocal, I'm going to say slope of the perpendicular, and that's just some notation to tell me the difference between the original and the one perpendicular. I'm going to flip the fraction, 5 over 1, and flip the sign, so it's negative now, and that's just negative 5. I can plug that into my point slope formula with this point right here. So I have y minus negative 1 equals m, which is negative 5, times x minus 4. I'm going to distribute negative 5x plus 20. Subtract 1 from both sides. And I have y equals negative 5x plus 19. And that's my final answer. You do have an assignment on this, and it's a little lengthy. You will have a work day on Monday. You want to be sure that you get all of this stuff covered so that you're ready for your test next week. Good luck, and let me know if you have questions.